might want to update your yes. For project 2, it's today, but yeah, I guess it's the 24 hours you can do it tomorrow. Yeah, but yeah. It'll be, I'm kind of gonna show you this actually, but all right, everybody, let's go ahead and get started today. So today's lecture, we're going to continue talking about testing. And honestly, I think testing is one of my more favorite topics that we cover this class. Basically, by the end of class today, y'all are going to write a test for the go-to feature that you added, okay? But it's going to incorporate some of the things we talked about last lecture, like mocking, and just like needing to sort of think through different edge cases whenever we design tests, okay? So first though, we've sort of gotten away from it. Let's do a round of time guesser. I haven't played this in a while. Maybe we can just do one round of this before getting into the activity. Okay, so we have to guess the location and the time, like the year that this picture was taken. What do we think the background is here? This is the whole image. Yeah, there's a million flags in the background. Wow. Wow, I don't know. It's a very.
Literally is an Africa.
It's pretty new.
What boats are new?
Yeah,
Wait, so what's the badge she's holding?
The bad.
What's the lanyard say? I need for big bags.
I don't know. I'm not sure. But okay, let's do let's like force this now. So what's the location we want to guess? Maybe approximate areas. Somewhere in Europe, maybe? I don't know. It might not even be Europe, to be honest. Okay, I'm gonna guess.
There's gotta be Latin America.
You think so? I have a feeling too. You think it's Latin America?
This is the building.
Okay. I'd like that guess a little bit more. Let's go Lima. Is that okay? Near some water too, maybe. And then the year. We're gonna go. Any guesses from the crowd?
I know 1999.
Okay. 1999. Okay, let's go that. That was from Jerry.
What should be at?
Whoa! Oh, it was like that, but it was Europe.
Wow.
Bro, where?
Oh,
Oh, it's France.
Hey, picked up on the here though.
Near Nice. Okay. You live and you learn. Okay, let's get started. So, couple announcements for due dates. Project 2 revisions are due today. I know there's also Project 3 going on, and Project 3, the hard deadline is tonight. Project 2 will let you do the 24 hours for this as well, so if you need to get it done by tomorrow, that's fine. But yeah, the main thing is Project 3, the final deadline is tonight. I know this one was definitely a bit more difficult, and some people might be working up until the deadline. The advice here, I'll say, is submit what you have tonight in the pull request before midnight. And we'll give, partial credit, as much credit as we can for that submission, and then maybe you can wrap up the submission tomorrow, and then we'll consider that for some points back as well, okay? But I feel bad like extending the deadline today because I think so many people have already sort of accounted for today being the deadline. So we will have you, turn in what you have tonight, all right? And then you can wrap it up tomorrow if you need. The third announcement here actually is what Cushy posted about on EdStem last night. So if you haven't had a chance to, please check out Cushy's announcement on EdStem. It's about having like clean pull request actually. Let me update this, clean pull request, okay? So what is happening in the class so far is that y'all are working on these projects, project 2, project 3, and you have to submit those in pull requests. But then we're also doing all these in-class activities where we're modifying parts of the idle-lib code base, right? Sort of a very important part of just software engineering or using like Git in general and making pull requests is that we want to make sure that when we are making commits or pull requests, we are only submitting the changes that are relevant to like that feature, okay? You might be working on like 2 or 3 features at once, but when you are ready to like submit or like push one feature, you only want to push code related to that, right? So I think a lot of times, I want to do a little demo here. So this is the code base or like the repository for our class website, okay? This is what sort of how we like add stuff to the class website. You can see all these like links here and stuff, okay? So I'm just gonna show an example of how you can sort of almost like undo or revert a Git commit. And I think it would be great if y'all could make sure that this is correct before the submission deadline tonight for project 3, where you should make sure your pull request only has the files that are relevant to project 3, okay? It shouldn't have like changes to stuff that we did in like week 3 of the class related to like the, PyShell prompt. It shouldn't have, changes to the test code that we're gonna make in class today. So let's just show an example here, okay? So this is the repository for our class website. I'm just going to add some like example code here, okay? And then I'm going to save it, and then we'll do git status. We can see, by the way, we're going to have a lecture on Git next week. This is just for the sake of this project. So right now I've just like made a change. I did git status, okay? I can see that I've modified this file. This is the project 4 write-up. I've modified this file, and now I think what a lot of us do is just do git add dots, okay? This is like git adds everything to Git. So even if there were like more files here, we would add all of those to our staging area in Git, okay? So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna do that command, because this is like basically what I think a lot of people have done so far. We do a git add, and so now let's do git status again. Okay, now it shows it in green, it says changes to be committed, okay? So that means this is about to be in the next thing that I commit, all right? And so if I then do like git commit -m, this is, again, I think what the sort of 3 commands that a lot of us are used to running. Git commit a message, let's just say pushed silly changes for lecture 11, or lecture 12, okay? So I did this, all right? And now it's in the GitHub repository. So I'm gonna actually show y'all, show how it'll look in the actual web UI of it. Oops, that's too much. Okay, so this is like what the repository looks like, and I think it should show that there were changes. Like, oh wait, I need to git push. Sorry. So after I did the git commit, I'll git push those changes, right? And so now, when you go to like the web UI version of your repository, it shows that I just made this commit, right? But the issue that I'm trying to show here is that, say y'all accidentally did a commit all files, and now you have all your changes for your project 3 submission, okay? If you eventually make a pull request from this, it'll include all the things that were just committed, right? But if you want to undo a commit, okay, here's where you want to, I think the resource that Cushy posted on the announcement is quite useful here. It's pull request for projects. This gittower.com. It's basically this git restore command, okay? This is the command that you should use for undoing a commit of a file that you want to keep the changes for, right? You don't want to like undo all the changes that you made to that file, but you just want to like pull it back from the changes that you had pushed, okay? You just want to keep the changes there, but no longer have it be committed in your branch, right? So you'll use this git restore command. You'll specify the file name, and then you also have to say like what you want to revert the status of the file to, basically, okay? So what I mean by that is you have to give it a specific commit like address, all right? So to see your commit address, you can like click on, oh wait, how is this? You can click on, oh yeah, these like 79 commits. You can see like all the different commits that you've made in the past. You'll see these different messages. So this is what I had just pushed. Push silly changes for lecture 12. But say I want to like bring the file back to how it was in a previous commit. Okay, so I'll say like I'm just gonna do this one. Okay, this project 4, or let's do like fixed schedule. Okay, this thing that you see on the bottom here is the commit details. Okay, or sorry, is the like commit address. All right, so you can click on that commit address. You'll go to that specific commit. Okay, and then you can actually just copy that. And then we're gonna run the command that we saw in git restore, okay? So I'll do git restore, and then the file name. So this was like docs/assets/ I think like project 4. Projects, and then project4.md, and then we have to do this -- source, and then ref. So -- source, and then the reference. Okay. So this one, it actually like undid those changes. Actually, maybe we don't want to be doing that, right? Maybe we can do stage. I think what stage does is like things that have already been committed. Maybe that's what I should have demonstrated. So let's just do example changes here. And then I'll save it, and then when we do git status, we see this, and when we do git add here, now you can do like git restore -- stage, and then you can like specify the file to undo the add basically. So git restore -- stage, and then we'll do docs/project/project4.md. Okay, and then now when we do git status, oh, I should have actually committed it and then done this. Sorry, I messed up the order of this, but okay, basically look into this staged and source to basically undo some of the previous commits that we've made. All right, please try to use this before the submission for project 3 today. Okay. Let's get into testing now, all right? So what I'm gonna do to start this is show y'all the sort of like best approach for project 2. And I'm hoping all of y'all can actually get to this point because we're gonna write test cases for the changes that we've made, okay? So remember, in the go-to-line implementation, we have, we have 2 places of interest. We have the go-to-line events, okay? And we have query.py. You can think of this almost as like the solution for project 2, okay? So we have the go-to-line event, and hopefully most of us did sort of this approach. I think I demonstrated this in class one time too, of how to get the total number of lines, right? The approach we were hoping that you took is that you recognize that text is a parameter to the go-to constructor, okay? Text is what we're using to get the total lines, but it's also something that we have access to in GoTo, all right? And by looking at the query class, you can sort of realize that text is actually the parent variable. Okay, this variable parent is sort of what the value for text is stored in, okay? And you can figure that out based on just reading the code here and seeing the actual parameter, okay? So when we are at the go-to class, all right, this is sort of the solution I'm hoping that y'all add. And if you don't have it right now, I think maybe most of y'all should have this. If you don't, just add this in directly because we're going to be like needing this line of code for us to write test cases. So it's basically max lines equals self.parent instead of .text, okay? And then the rest will be the same. Yours might not have n-1c, it might have n, and then you've done something else, but that's fine. So what I want to do is now just start with the activity. So make sure you have this, all right?
Wait, can you stay on for those ones?
Yeah. Let me actually like even copy paste it into the lecture notes, or into the lecture. Okay. So you should have this, and then you can sort of use that variable appropriately, later in it. So make sure you have this, but then I want y'all to do this next activity. So I think we're gonna spend a decent amount of time on this activity, okay? And take your time with this because I think testing is, a very important principle that I wish we could have taught earlier in the sort of curriculum for this class. Unfortunately, this wasn't part of Project 2, but I think it's a really important outcome that y'all make a test for your changes in GoToLine, okay? So read the test for the GoTo class and first answer what examples of mocking do you see? Remember we talked about mocking last time, how we sort of emulate or make fake classes and fake methods for our testing purposes. And then make sure that you have this self.parent thing. And actually, let me just show you what happens, okay? So to sort of motivate this even more. So this is what the test currently look like, okay? If you go to test_query, you'll see this. We're in the GoTo test class. We have dummy module name, and I guess it's just some mock class that we're using. It's like a dummy module basically, and we have this entry OK equals query.goto.entry_OK. It looks like that is set equal to the entry OK method in query.py, right? But then I'll leave y'all to sort of understand what's going on in these two methods here. But right now, when I run this. Okay, so actually, yeah, this is what I wanted to show. So right now, I have what most of y'all have as the implementation for Project 2, right? And what I've done is I've added these two checks. If the number that they enter is bigger than max lines, then we show this error. If it's smaller than negative max lines, we have to show a different error. So right now, this earlier test, this is just if we enter the letter A, we're going to get an error that says not a base 10 integer, right? We have not done anything to break this functionality, right? If we still enter the letter A, it should still say not a base 10 integer, right? But I think if y'all run this as well, you can click just on the side here to run this. You'll see that we get an error for the test failing, okay? Our test fails even though we didn't really modify that at all. But it looks like the reason is we get an attribute error that says dummy module name has no attribute parent, right? So just to recreate this, you can actually go to your tests here. Remember this little test tube thing is your testing. You should have this idle_test if you were here in last lecture and have the settings.json. When you go to test, you can click this little rightmost icon. It'll actually take you to the test method. You can either run it from pressing this GoTo test, it'll run all of them. You can run a single test at a time by clicking the play button next to it. But the sort of takeaway here that keep this in mind as you work through this activity is that this is the error we're getting. Dummy module name has no attribute parent, but we know that the GoTo class does have an attribute parent, right? Because this is sort of the implementation that we've made. So what y'all are going to do in this activity is one, look at examples of mocking, but second, you're going to have to modify this code, okay? You're gonna have to add some code here, and you're actually going to use some mocking to make these test cases pass, okay? And again, make sure you have this implementation. This is sort of the solution for Project 2. So if you don't have it yet, make sure you're using self.parent and you're able to have this test fail. This is going to take some time. We'll walk around and help. Start working individually, then I'll give some hints every few minutes, all right? But please call us over if you do need some help. And then try writing your own test case, but that'll come at the end. You can close out the PS4. Okay. So, yeah, you're no, so, go to file.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so you can choose
This
the
version
already as a binary. Open the bit of item itself, not the individual file.
Yeah.
Okay, so when you go to the or go to the like where you would do for the VM, yeah, but that's what I was gonna say. So go to that directory versus the new push. Okay. And then let me know if you okay, I can help you with the test.
Or now you're
Okay, so I'll just copy and paste.
So is test bogus good?
Alright.
Yeah, it's usually self-documented. Like or
I didn't change it, but it does.
oh, okay, so let's see your query.py Okay, so I guess the way you, the way you've implemented it is hitting this first, right? It's throwing the exception and then returning none, and it's not even getting to the self.parent line. So the reason ours was failing is because our line was before the try catch. So this would at least help avoid that, but you might run into a different error than the second test or third test that's not for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. But I guess that one just depends on the parent. But still, like maybe for this, if you want to just have test focus fail, you can leave that up. And then still though, you have to make the same change to make all of them pass.
Okay.
But that's cool. Yeah, just moving it lower avoids that test fail. So let me just make this announcement because I've gotten a couple of questions about it. For some people, your test bogus might not fail, and that would be because you might have this self.parent thing like lower, okay? If you have it down here, right? What's happening in self.bogus is that it's just like entering the letter A, okay? It's basically creating this mock like entry thing. It's saying the user's entering the letter A, all right? And then you can see what happens here. It won't get into this try thing, right? Because it's actually going to be a value error. You can't actually enter a string A for this thing. So it'll give this error not a base 10 integer, and then it'll return, right? So this method will be done running, and it won't give us the error for self.parent, right? Because we haven't ever even encountered that line. So depending on where your self.parent is, you might not fail test bogus, but I think you would fail like test bad go to and test good go to. All right. So just to clear up that confusion. You can keep it anywhere you want, but you'll still have to make the same change. So proceed in the activity even if you are passing test bogus. Try to get like all three of them to pass, and then write your own test case for your changes.
I already have my like.
It must be running like 1 or 2.
Well, I was just trying to get like this. But I tried to like the testing thing, and then I think it was looking for them.
Maybe we should try Googling this error on it. Wait, is it still running? It's still running.
But I just know
Oh, oh, you're deleted and right. So let's just go through. Yeah, oh yeah, we tried that. Is this a happy bill or is it just this time? Okay. I would try that.
I just kind of want
Would try to share.
to like, let's say,
I've actually never seen this. No. Just close VS Code, quit the application.
Yeah, it was like discover test or this workspace where it's.
Oh, so you're doing,
I don't
have like two?
But
Okay.
I'm trying to.
Oh, okay. Okay, right.
I don't think I have the JSON file. So I was trying to set up this from last week.
Yeah.
In the use. I
Yeah, you can make it.
said it was actually.
Okay, so you should only have idle. Yeah, otherwise it'll think it's trying to do a test for the entire folder that you have.
Yeah. Should I be an idle?
No, you can just be an idle. So you'll want to like close this like window or and like reopen VS Code with only like idle.
Okay.
And that should have it. Yeah. So a hint here for getting something to work is, remember last time we looked into the mock TK class. So we looked into this, right? Mock TK. This is mocking an entire like tkinter text widget, right? So let's go to this text class, right? We have class text, and this is a non-GUI replacement for tkinter.text, okay? Remember, self.parent, and you know, it is sort of derived from self.text. This is like a tkinter text widget, right? That's how we're doing like text.index. Like we were just been like looking into the tkinter text widgets a lot. So it looks like, or I'll just tell you this now, you're going to want to make use of this mock TK text class in your test query tests, okay? So let me just go to test query. You'll need to basically be mocking the tkinter text widget somewhere here in it, okay? I'll leave it at that, but just work through that for a few minutes. Try to like maybe add something in init that will let you do self.parent.
You don't have to.
Okay, I left two comments here. Mock the tkinter text widget and then use that as self.parent, okay? That's just a high level sort of guidance for this. And the way you can check if you did it correctly is run the test cases and see if they pass, right?
Yeah. I need to translate for yourself first.
This test.
I Google it doesn't seem to learn
So you could actually just add the settings.json file manually, like create a VS Code. You see how there's this like .vs Code, and you probably already have launch.json, right?
VS Code. I just make it myself.
Oh yeah, but do you have launch.json yet or no?
No.
Oh, okay. You just make it right now?
Yes.
Okay.
Should I add it myself now?
Yeah, just do settings.json, and then it's in the previous lecture.
Yes.
But you got it. What did you find? Settings. Oh. Let's hear that. And you can even look at other examples of how mock text. You can look at other examples of how mock text is used. Right? Okay.
This. Oh, no, this is
Okay.
So we wouldn't want to be
I'm studying JSON.
go-to object. I actually don't even know if this will work.
Oh wait, that just got me.
Coach would just be, they would
The
be
actual-
creating an instance of Curie or Coach.
Oh, wait, so this is for entry, okay. And then,
Are you saying you're doing other?
wait, so you add.
That would create an
Oh,
instance.
yeah, that is basically what we're doing, just with, in shorthand, okay, that's pretty much the.
Okay, cool.
But now we want to add a tag for, in case like an enter number is required, and we can now try that by code.
Yeah, I think that's.
Actually, we have your usage.
Yeah.
The player.
Yeah.
Can I go to you?
So, I think I just put it right bar as an beginning. Okay, you're on the right track that we want to make something called self-dot parents. But rather than making equal to bar, so yeah, what you saw that as bar is basically just like blocking any sort of like object that has a value that we want to check. It's just kind of like it can be an integer, like a Boolean value, which is kind of like an abstract or something. We don't want to be mocking bars for self-doctrine. We'll want to be mocking text instead. Because self.parent, remember the problem where you self.parent.index and so we should make use of the mock text class. That's where we and in this we want to be using. You're actually quite close right now. You're probably not changing some but just trying to figure out what self.parent should be. Not enough values. Yeah, so there, wait, did this happen? Which test? Was it all? Yeah, so this, as I think, nothing is actually, okay, this is like good. This is sorry. Okay, I'm gonna go over this. Look at the modern or they all have a list of like and so selection or something like that in here. See if you are using one of those constants that's yeah, that's pretty much
It's just confusing now because like I don't see.
Yeah.
So I can't.
So some of y'all are starting to make some progress here. I'll give another sort of hint to like get you to write a full test case. Here, yeah, you're gonna do like self.parent is gonna be equal to something, okay? But it's not what GitHub Copilot was suggesting there. So you'll do self.parent equal to something, okay? And then you might want to add actual text to the mocked tkinter text, okay? Text widget. Because remember, our implementation, let's always think of this in terms of what features we implemented, right? We implemented a feature where if there's only 5 lines of code in the editor and they enter something that's like 7, then we should give an appropriate error message, right? And if we look at test_query right now, they just have like one where they're entering the letter A, one where they're entering 0, which is not a positive integer, and one where they're entering something that's valid, right? But we have to go sort of one step above what the current testing is and say, like, if they entered 5 when there's really only 3 lines of code, it should give an error, all right? So you'll want to add a test case. I'll sort of give a bit of scaffolding for this. You do like def test, let's say like high value go to, okay? And then you would have some similar code here. And then one more thing, actually, y'all might get an error that's gonna be like an index error. Okay, I'm gonna add this as a comment. Like index error, like unpacking values, expected. Angela, what was it? Expected 1 got 2 or something like that. Expected 2 got 1. Okay. This index error is something that you should run into. If you run into this error, actually, you might be, I think you're going to be on the right track. To sort of get over this error, look into mock TK and look at this like big comment here about what possible values of index we can have, okay? When you run into that error, look into the decode method in the mock text class, and it'll tell you what things are allowed, and see if you want to like modify this mock TK thing, or maybe modify your implementation. You might need to modify query.py to make our code compatible with the test code. Okay, so I'll just say look into mock TK text class, the decode method. The decode method comment. Okay. Alright. And then by the end, write an actual test case for when they enter a number that's too large. Okay.
Well, yeah, I changed it so like.
You're looking for flyers.
So let's go to oh, it's because of Python directory or individual project, because then it's looking for tests for the full thing. Yeah. Okay, just one more very quick reminder, because it's sort of something I've seen a lot. Every time we're working with, you know, the debugger, the test cases, pretty much anytime you're going to work on anything in this class, just have the idle lib directory open, okay? It should say idle lib here, not individual projects and then your GitHub username, right? That's going to save you a lot of headache for using the debugger, code navigation, tests, and stuff like that. And since we're going to be using tests a lot, it's going to be
This is the same because you are connecting the ways of all.
and then
There is a way to apply it.
it'll run this. This, Oh, wow, that's great. I think downloading a PyTest. Oh, and you have a computer too. Okay, so for some reason it's not detecting. Maybe we fix this. Let's just close this and restart. We also installed extensions. Oh.
I didn't know for 6 months.
Are you serious?
Yeah. So one of my professors in community college, he had like 15 students, and he bought every laptop he was. Yeah, because one of us installed Covalent to yeah, and we had Linux, but then when I had it,
So that's what it is.
that's why I'm fine with that.
I'm not doing that.
What does the T
You get it.
Hey.
So, I think the teacher shared So the lesson here
Yes.
Yeah, and we modify that to be compatible. We understand. Okay. I understand you didn't have to begin it. Just okay, maybe take a second to try that.
You're creating this.
No, it's okay, it's okay. I'll actually okay, I'll just tell you. So
That was literally before me.
She was when she ran. Or sorry, engineer for like.
Already exists. You don't want to be drunk. Go to lunch. We can go to lunch. You can go to you said how no, that's true. It already exists. Well, no, I think we're paying. Oh, you want to give? I literally asked him if you can go to
Then you
look, man, I wish. You change font and then it's literally just like
true right now we try to read through the comments and understand why the word works, but like part of it but it looks like you are set up.
no, I don't think so.
It disappeared.
No, and he just said it didn't read.
Wait, but you have to move it.
That's pretty cool.
No, they didn't. No, but they didn't start. But like. Alright, just go color
Try opening up like the test query. Test query you can run.
yeah, I mean,
There's also documents for idle test. So, yeah, it works as a readme. There's directions on how to get the proper number of components. Okay, then you can do that. But normally this UI should say like that's weird. I don't know why it's
Yeah.
Should still be done, say around this problem.
Yeah, later. I'm trying to work into it right now. Especially see if you can find it out. Using the UI, do the command line. Think about it.
Yeah, so it's a great line.
Yeah.
Did you really?
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to do a quick poll, like where people are at right now. Should we just go over the full answer right now, or should we give a little bit more time, or should I give a little bit more hint and then a bit more time? So those are the two options. One, if you want me to go over the answer now. Two, if you want me to give a little bit hint or to have a little bit more time to work. So if you prefer option one, can you raise your hand? Okay, if you prefer option two, can you raise your hand? Okay, I'm gonna go with option one because more people voted for that, alright? So, let's just go over the activity. I'll actually just give 1 minute to submit these because I know like a few people have submitted it. Please like write something in and at least write out, maybe then we'll give a couple minutes for this, write out a test that you think would work, okay? I know you haven't gotten it working yet, but like give your best guess for what a new test would look like based on what you already seen. Okay, just another few seconds here to make sure you submit something. I think there should be more than 20, so please submit. Yeah, totally fine. I know it might not be a correct like test function, or you might not have figured it out. Just submit something. This is how we'll do attendance. All right. Okay, cool. We're at 30 responses. So let's go ahead and go over this now. So first, can somebody actually just let me know what is an example of mocking that we saw in the go-to test? Like, what is something up here? And just like briefly tell me what is being mocked. Yeah, we'll go over that.
Self.entry and self.entry error.
Yeah, self.entry and self.entry error. So what is this like var doing? Did anybody like look into this? Can someone explain like maybe just like an English description of what we are doing with this var mock? Anyone have a guess? I want to take a stab at it. Maybe the comments can help you out. Okay, yeah.
I think that's.
yeah, it's kind of like the input for the GoTo query. So I was even thinking a bit more abstract than that, but I think that is exactly what it is for this case. It looks like we have self.entry. Okay, and the way you want to like sort of confirm what's going on here is looking at the actual implementation as well. And remember, self.entry looks like it's just some value that is stored or like inputted by the user, okay? But then we have this get method, right? Like this sort of try thing looks like it's just getting in the line number from whatever the user typed in, right? And so that is what we're mocking the user input. But I think it's quite interesting that there is just like a class called var that is used to sort of mock anytime we have like a get method or a set method from any object or class that has an attribute that we care about. Okay, so what I sort of mean by that is we are using var here because we need to do entry.get. Okay, but there are so many other times in the code base where we will just have to do like a .get from something, right? And what this var is allowing us to do is not have to make like a million different mocks of like every single one of these objects. We're basically just mocking this .get function regardless of whatever is before this dot, okay? And then all we have to do is just set the correct variable name equal to it, and then we are able to call, so let's look at this var method. It looks like we initialize it with like some value typically, and then when we do set, because like we don't have to initialize it with master value or name because these are all defaulted to none, right? But it looks like we can set some value to it, so we can do like entry.set, and then maybe set it equal to 5, and then when we do entry.get, we'll just return that value. Okay. So I think this is actually a pretty cool way to sort of mock the general process of having to like access or get some value. All right. But now let's get on to how we would actually write a test to make our tests pass, okay? So let's go to the test query tests here. Where am I? Okay, I guess I can just run it. Okay. Whoa. Wow, this is crazy. I just can't find test query. Yeah, here in the thing, I just needed LMFP. Oh, it's just not there, right? That's insane.
It's the one under yeah.
Oh, sorry, which one? Okay, I'm just gonna go to the class here. Oh wait, but then I can't, here, I can run this. So, I don't know what just happened, that is very weird. Give me 1 second. Oh, maybe it's because there's a syntax error in there somewhere. Yeah, now it's detecting it. Okay, that's interesting, I had no idea. I think this is my current hypothesis, because there's some syntax error here when I just defined this and then it's saying that unexpected indent. I don't know why, but I think that made it disappear until I had sort of undid it. But now it's showing up. So anyway, okay, when we run this GoTo test, all right, yeah, we're getting this error that this self.parent doesn't exist, okay? It has no attribute parent. So what we actually need to do is modify this class called dummy module name. Dummy module name is basically like acting in for the GoTo class, okay? So we're gonna do self.parent equals, but what do we need to make it equal to? Can someone help me out here? Like, how are they able to actually mock the tkinter text widget? Anyone? I know some people were able to get it. Yeah, Angela.
I imported a text message from the mock tk. So imported in the beginning.
Yeah, so up here we did from idle lib.idle test. Yeah, dot mock. You did mock tk. So. Okay, mock tk, and then we import text. Okay. So now, just to clarify what this is doing in Python, this is going to the idlelib folder, then the idle test folder, and then the mock TK file, okay? And then it's importing the class text. And so what we want to do is actually just create a variable called self.parent that is equal to this like text object. So let me go to text. Self.parent equals text, okay? So is this enough? Have we like sort of done it? So one thing we should like always be doing or thinking here is let's just try running it, okay? So it looks like, yeah, we get this error that I mentioned earlier. So all I did was like run test bogus, right? And it says an index error, sorry, value error, not enough values to unpack, expected to got one, okay? And actually the sort of hint here is to look at the error tracing. This one is, I think, just pointing out the line that caused the error, that it tried to get line, comma, character, but it could only get like one thing. If you just go back to like right before this, we can go to the decode function in mocktk, okay? And so when we go to the decode function in mocktk, it actually has a very clear like docstring comment here. This basically tells us, so remember, just to like clarify, mocktk was something that the idle developers made, right? They wanted to mock the whole like tkinter thing, and so they created like the smaller things, the only things that they needed from tkinter for idle, okay? So they've like built all this stuff to sort of emulate tkinter, but they have limited the number of inputs to the index function, okay? So we can only use stuff like line.car, line.end, insert, and end, okay? But what we did, I sort of set this up intentionally so that you'd have to sort of learn this lesson of sometimes we have to modify our implementation based on what like testing. We really have two approaches. We can either modify this to just say like end, or we would just have to modify the thing that we are mocking, right? We would probably just want to add some like functionality in here for end minus 1c. You know, we might want to basically, you know, we'd want to add a comment and say like end minus 1c, and then we would have to update this mocking code to allow end minus 1c, okay? But I actually think a simpler approach here is to just do end, because maybe we don't want to change the testing code so much. It's such a like integral test class. So then we'll just do end, and then we'll do -1, okay? So now again, we want to run the test and see what happens. And again, it gives an error. This time though, it's because of unsupported types between string and integer, and the error is because we are doing like a -1. So if you haven't run into this error before, it's basically that, you know, it's expecting something to be an integer, but what we're actually using is a string. Because 1 is an integer, we know that this must be the string. A sort of simple get around to this is casting it to an integer, all right? And then let's just save it and run it again. So you're starting to get maybe the sense here of what it eventually is like to write a test case and then have to like modify your solution to make it work. You can think of it like when you've done an assignment in past CS classes that has like a grade scope auto submission and it tells you how many tests you've passed. It's kind of just like, you know, hacking away, and you want to keep running it and getting that like iterative feedback of, is what I'm doing correct, you know, in the scope of the test cases, okay? So like really want to emphasize this aspect of like continuing to like check and like, you know, test whether your code is doing what it's supposed to, all right? So I think we're still not done yet, right? Because now this will all pass, but what we haven't tested is stuff like this, right? Like what if a user enters something that's like way too high of a value? What we would want to do here actually is add some lines of code to add text to our mocked text widget, okay? So to see how we can do that, we'd actually want to like go into the mock text class and see. Looks like they have this self.data thing, and I think we can do insert, okay? So we have this insert method that allows us to add text to our mocked text thing. And so I'm actually just gonna do that. It looks like we have self, we have index, and we have characters. So insert characters before the character at index. So let's just try self.parent.insert, and then I'm just going to, do I need to do index? Yeah, so we have to pass in some value. Let's just do, I don't know, 0. And then let's type in something to add. I'm just gonna do like foo \n, foo \n, foo \n. Okay, I'm just using foo because I don't know, I think a lot of the code base uses that as well. As like the dummy text. So let's see if this even works. I just want to run it to make sure we don't run into any error from that line of code that we added. And it looks like we do run into an error. And I did not expect this error actually. Let's see what the message is. Bad text index 0. What do we have to change it to? Let's just try 1 maybe. Does anybody know what we have to change it to? Anybody get, yeah, what is it?
Or, I don't know for sure, but I think it has to be like one of the.
Yeah, in decode, right? Oh, great. So the answer here is that we need, these are the different indexes, right? This is what the input index is. So let's just do at, I think, I guess we can add it at end and it would be fine too. But let's just do 0.0, okay? We'll do line.character. So we'll do the 0.0 here. Let's hope that this works. Okay, now that's working, right? So now we've been able to have like some mock text widget with, it looks like something that's like 3, maybe 4 lines of code, depending on if we have that extra new line. So what we want to do is add a test case. Okay, let me just uncomment this. So test high value go to, right? And we'll actually like copy like a lot of this, you know? Or sorry, let me copy this. So let's just make sure we're all on the same page about what this code here is doing. We're creating a dummy module name, and this is going to be like whatever the user is inputting, right? We want to check the case where the user has inputted a number that is way higher than how much our current text widget holds. So let's just do something like 10, right? We know that 10 is going to be way higher than 3 or 4, depending on whether it counts that extra new line. And so this, I think, is like sufficient conditions to check, part of what we have written, right? We're checking this specific case. And so we'll want to see like what our expected behavior is. It'll say like enter a number between 1 and something inclusive. So one thing you can maybe recognize is what these assert commands are doing, okay? There's really 2 main ones here that you should see. One is assert equal, and assert equal is a bit more straightforward. It just returns true if this first thing is equal to the second thing, all right? But then maybe you noticed this, but we have this like insert in thing, okay? And what we can actually do is we can look at query.py and see what happens. We have this show error that's not a base 10 integer, and then there's a period at the end, okay? We have the period at the end in our actual functionality. But then here we don't have the full text matching, right? But fortunately, this is an assert in, so we just have to check if this substring is in whatever is like actually shown as the error, okay? Does that just make sense for what assert in is doing there and why this is still okay? So then we just want to make ours something like enter a number between 1, and I think that's actually we probably want we want to make sure it's 1 and not negative something because I guess we just have a different error message here. So anyway, we want to just check if this enter a number between 1 is in the entry error, okay? So now let's just try running this, and it passes. Okay, awesome. But if we did something like 2, 2 would be something that it shouldn't throw an error to enter a number between this. So let's try that, and this error fails. We get something called an assertion error. The assertion error basically means that our logic was wrong somewhere, that the 2 was not equal to none, and what it's actually returning is none. We're returning none because we're getting hit into this if statement and showing the error and returning none. But what we are actually doing is inputting a valid number, okay? So let's keep it at 10 and let's run it. Okay. That is sort of process of adding a test case and using mocking. Yeah, hopefully, I don't know, I find this stuff pretty interesting, the whole aspect of having to write so much code for testing purposes. But I also want the lesson to be that testing is not just like some afterthought that you just give once you've written your full like implementation, okay? One thing I sort of wanted us to understand is like we actually had to like modify our implementation to pass the test cases, to satisfy the whole testing framework, okay? And so I actually wanted to just briefly talk about this concept called test-driven development. I think y'all might have heard of it before in 110. I think we sort of think of it as like, oh, it's just what, I don't know, some people do that like have planned out the project very well, or it's for like very rare cases. I just kind of like want to, I guess, like plug test-driven development as something that I think is very useful for a number of reasons besides just like, correctness or getting tests to pass. So in short, the process of test-driven development is that you write your test cases first, okay? When you're given like project 2 or project 3 or whatever, project 4, you don't even start like implementing any code for the solution. You write the test cases first, okay? And the reason you do that is actually like down here, you sort of are already required to like mentally decompose the task into different requirements, right? So think of like if we did test-driven development for project 2 for the go-to thing, we might not have had all the syntax correct. Actually, we would have been able to like have this syntax fully correct, where we have an understanding of what the expected input should be and what the expected output should be, right? But then we would also have to think of all the different edge cases, right? Like this is when we have a user input of 10, when there's only 4 lines of code, right? We would also then maybe realize like, oh, we have to figure out how to handle the edge case of 0, I think we saw some different implementations for 0, even in like among project 2. Is 0 gonna still throw an error? Is it going to just go to the start of the line or start of the file? So you kind of have to think through the requirements, and that also helps you with the actual implementation, right? You can sort of check it off one by one and sort of, pass one test at a time. And the other one that I think is a bit underrated is this last one, narrows our scope for development. So, if and when you're eventually working in an actual software job, you're gonna have maybe a lot of things going on at once, right? You might be working on 2 to 3 projects where each is on a slightly different code base, or is on a different code base. So there'll be like some context switching from one code base to another, but you'll also be like, having to push changes or make changes to a lot of different things, right? When you already have the tests written out, it's almost like, then it's almost like how some of these like more intro CS classes are, where you really do just need to get the functionality working and you don't need to do anything beyond passing those test cases. Obviously, you have to make it like readable, maintainable, good code quality, but you don't want to be adding in extra features beyond the scope of the test cases, because the test cases are kind of dictating like what exact logic you need to implement, okay? So I think it helps a lot from like a management perspective. You're sort of like forced to plan ahead, decompose the problem, and it also helps with like timing. You don't end up doing something way too grandiose or outside the scope of the actual requirement. Okay. I think this is pretty interesting, and it really I think this code base gives a good example of how to use some of these specific testing practices like mocking. So before we get into our next topic, which is test coverage, are there any questions about mocking, about the activity that we just did for testing query?
Wouldn't you change it query to
Yeah. So before it was this end minus 1c, because the way we sort of found that out was looking into the actual tkinter code base. Like I think maybe we Googled like tkinter index get end of line, or maybe we used ChatGPT or something to get it. And I think some of the documentation tells us about like using end minus 1c. I don't remember exactly where. Some of y'all might have done like tk.end, which is a constant that is just equal to the string end. Just personally, I have used end minus 1c. And so if you did something like just do, end, then you would be totally fine. Because this is like a constant that I think you'd have to import it at the top, or you might have just done end. If you did this in your initial implementation, then you're actually totally fine for passing those test cases. But if you did have like end minus 1c, then you would run into an issue for passing the idle test cases because this function, which is part of like the mocked version of tkinter, the thing the idle developers have made, it doesn't support end minus 1c. Like when we do an index that is anything but one of these, we're gonna get an error. It like sort of mentions it in the doctrine here, like exactly what we have, what we're allowed to input, which is different from the actual tkinter implementation, and that's why there's that error that it is. Okay? Any other questions? Okay, awesome. So now I want to start this next sort of subunit about test coverage, okay? So if you haven't gotten sort of like the point of this, like testing is gonna be like a very important part of whatever sort of job you end up working in. And I think testing is not taught so explicitly or taught so much in intro courses. You know, a lot of times it's like automatic tests. You don't have to be like, you don't write the code and write the test, you write the code and hope you pass the test. Which might also still happen in industry, but you do need to be way more mindful about how you write code that's able to pass tests, okay? So one thing here that is like a very important concept is called test coverage. Basically, whenever we're writing tests, we want to know, are we covering all of the code that we've actually written, right? And so if we use project 2 as an example, we have like, you know, some of these different lines. We would want to check that this line is actually correctly able to get some integer. We want to check when the user inputs a valid number, but we also want to check when the user enters, you know, a non-base 10 integer. But then we want to check each of these conditionals, right? And what we would need to do is find some way to see like, okay, we have this test bad go to. We would want to know exactly which lines of code in this function are being hit, right? And the goal here is sort of to get 100% coverage. If every single line is tested, then like we can't mess up, right? Nothing can be wrong. So one thing you might have noticed looking through some of these test files is that at the top of every single test file, there's like a stat that says how much coverage it has, okay? So right now we don't really know what this means, right? I just see like, okay, 93%, 96%, like what exactly does that mean? Does that mean what percent of lines are covered? Does it mean like what percent of branches are covered, right? Are we getting like 100% of all of the different conditions under if and else? So one sort of interesting thing that we won't go into now is the different types of metrics that exist for test coverage. Okay, there's so many different sort of options you can use for like determining whether something is covered or not, whether a method is covered, whether a line is covered. I won't have y'all do it right now, but this README is super useful for just understanding the tests. Okay, it tells you how to like run the tests. It tells you the code structure of it. It tells us about GUI tests, and it also tells us about test coverage. Okay. So this is actually going to be an exploration activity, but I'm going to assign it next week. So actually just pretend I didn't say that. You don't have to worry about it yet. But you're going to be running one of these coverage sort of like libraries on our code or on our like idle code base to see if you're able to get matches with like 96%, 93%, etc. Okay? But to sort of motivate this, we're going to wrap up with this activity that I think we'll just do in the next 5 minutes and then wrap up in the last 2 minutes. So y'all remember the history class and the history feature. So remember what's actually happening here is when we do cd dot dot cd dot dot slash python dot exe. So this history thing is when we have like stuff in the shell, right? If we do like x equals 7, y equals 4, and then we can do like shell previous history, it'll show the previous one, okay? This is implemented in the store method in the history class. So we can actually do command T store and just press enter. Now you're in this. What I want you all to do is look through the tests for test store, okay? You can find that by looking through the idle test directory and going to test history. Look through the test for store, And what y'all will need to do is find out which of the test cases, so let me actually just go to test store. Okay, here. There's these 3 tests, okay? Test store short, test store duplicates, and test store reset, okay? Out of these 3, we need to figure out which of these methods is covering these 2 lines, okay? Just do a bit of code reading here. You don't have to run anything. You might want to run something and have a print statement, but in these last 5 minutes of class, let's try to figure out which methods are responsible for testing these 2 lines. Like which tests cover line 1 and which ones cover line 2. You can just go to test history, and then it's the, yeah, it'll be the store test, yeah, and then it's the Okay, so this is the method with the lines, and those are the 3 tests that you need to check. To find these tests, you can do Command T, and then it just lets you go to a symbol, and you can start typing this test out, and it'll hit you. Command T is go to symbol, or maybe Control T. Okay, just make sure you submit. You still have 1 more minute left, but make sure you submit by the end of the class.
But the things that I have said, you're just
If you never check the U.
and
I
Okay, so submit what you have right now. We'll start next class just going over this and then showing how to do this with like the inbuilt Python method. Again, just closing reminders. Remember project 2, get the changes in tonight if you can. I sort of showed what the ideal solution is, so please do it so we can start grading it. Then project 3, remember you have to submit the video as well, okay? But again, you don't do it in multiple takes, just screen record the features in action for highlighting stuff and not highlighting stuff. Don't worry too much about the presentation items, okay? Alright, see y'all on Tuesday.
Yeah.